to the whole college. They spend considerable amount of time selling themselves as well, being the law firm that they are and the culture that they have imbibed. So my point is also the same, that you should have specific questions related to them. Don't be very open and ask such questions which is a public knowledge. But if I can put a few instances, like for example, CAM has this policy of associate training program. Now, if they haven't covered it at the start of the interview, you can go ahead and ask them about the associate training program, and that would pique their interest, saying that how do you know it? At that point, you can say that, okay, a few of the seniors of our college have got selected and they were speaking very highly of it. I'm not asking you to butter up them during that whole process, but my point is that you should show that you have enough interest to ask them such questions, right? Because you are actually evaluating them, that they would appreciate. So coming back to the start of this topic of HR questions, I'll firstly give the instance of CAM. So note this down, and this is largely also based on my experience as well as what I've heard from seniors, that CAM expects goody good people. And when I say goody good, all I mean is affable, sort of friendly people who understand how the firm is structured. So that's Mr. Shroff at the top of it. And if anyone knows, and if anyone has heard about Mr. Shroff and the kind of interviews that he gives, you would know that he's very mythological based. Okay, he's very, ऐसे मतलब बोलते हैं ना, पूजा पाठ. But if you visit CAM's office, you will know that every corner and turn has a statue of any god or goddess. So have such whole understanding. Like the moment you enter in the firm, you should be noting everything. You don't know what you can be asked. Largely, CAM expects such people who appreciate their environment, who are soft spoken, who understand the culture, and who are ready to live by it. So when someone says that, okay, why do you want to work for Cyril Amachan Mangaldas, I think you should go on and say that we heard from the seniors that there's this associate training policy, there's good work-life balance which is provided, which can be a bit of a myth, but nonetheless it has a good culture and they take great pride in that. So when you put such points across, they would appreciate, because they would know that, okay, you have evaluated them from this point of view, and hence you are backing and sort of willing to be selected there. Because after interviewing good 14-15 people, they are anyway going to go with 4 or 5 people. So at that point, they also think in their mind that, okay, this person was very much interested in us. Rather, we should take name of this person first, because in case if there's a chance that this person would go anywhere else, it is still a waste of time. So my point is that the one who is appreciated would find a more of chance of being selected there. And this is how HR interviews usually work. So my whole interview of CAM was largely based on HR, because the moment I walked in, the partner said that, okay, we know everything about you. And so, and if such things happen to you, be appreciative. You say that, oh ma'am, you're being too kind, and have an engaging discussion. Just don't simply shy and keep quiet. That is all I'm saying. And since I say that, okay, they expect sort of goody good people, they say that, okay, even if we know everything about you, why don't we sort of with a formal question that tell us something about yourself? So at that point, I opted to tell us something beyond which is mentioned in the CV. And I tell them this and that, and then they ask me, why do you want to work for CAM, since especially that you have worked in here? So at that point, I gave a few instances of, okay, because of such ATB policy, work-life balance. At least my team had specifically never asked me to stay up late or stay back in the office. So at that point, the partner also gave a laugh, saying that it only happens in that specific thing that I had worked in. So we had a pretty nice discussion about it, and then a slightly technical question which they had asked is, okay, please point out any instance of any brief work profile that you have mentioned in the CV which you have thoroughly enjoyed, or which was which stayed in your mind. At that point, I had picked one that I was recently interning there, so I had picked one proposition. So I explained it to her that such and such it was the matter of it. So be very that even though you are giving interview in the very firm, you don't go on divulging the details of it. Even though they are the insiders, you do not want to do that, because at times many of the transactions which are happening are in the public domain of the firm, but still very reserved. Okay, so don't go on giving discussions and details about it. As far as what Methi and Rajdeep had said, expect that the partners who would be interviewing you at all these places are from government law college, since they know the culture that the GLC has, what kind of lectures happen and everything, they might start off with a discussion that what's life at GLC right now. We would want to know, and at times people tend to skip hobbies and the places that they have, like for example, position of responsibility. Often at times the partner in their time would have like joined debating society or could have been a part of placement committee. So they would find that as a common ground to have a further discussion upon it. And also at times, since I say that CAM has this philosophy. Oh, I forgot this. CAM has this philosophy where they think that you have like you have studied from a good law firm. GLC does have the stature. Don't don't ever downplay GLC. Mind will. We have like recently proved it up by getting a good rank. That may be a separate story, but still. So they also are very proud enough of the fact that they are from GLC, but they also know the culture, the lecture timings, and everything that keeps on happening. So my point is that when you are speaking about it, you update them, you tell them further about the things that are happening in the placement committee or any other committee that you were part of. So, for example, I also had a discussion about what I had contributed, what had add value while being in the uh, extracurricular activities that I've undertaken, and they were impressed by it. So everyone in here, every recruiter who's trying to hire you, is only looking at the fact that what you bring to the table, how you can add value. If you are able to add value, they'll value it in the first place and hire you. So just put the point across that you are here to do something more than mere research, because there are multiple facets to it. Okay, so show them that you are more of a person who also tries to like enjoy hobbies such as playing cricket or cooking or trekking, whatever, right? So be wary of that. And I don't think so there's anything specific that I remember which was right. So as I said, that there are a few questions which are rhetoric. So mind well that if you are asked questions such as that, is there anything that you would want to change at camp? I think it's best skipped. And in case if you have a good point, I think you can put it across politely. Uh, so that's pretty much it. And also one very important thing, I have recently come to understand that there's this trend going on that all of these places, all of these recruiters are trying to put their money on the horse which are tested. What I mean to say is that if, in case if you have previously interned there, there's a good chance that they would go with you because they have a feedback ready from the team that you would have worked at. So in case if nothing works out and in case if your interview still goes differently, don't be disheartened by the fact that you were not selected, because this is just a general trend where they are relying upon the ones that have previously interned or were a paralegal then. So I have seen that they appreciate grades first, even though I do not have great grades at the as the other peers of mine, but still I had done 2 internships there, which one was callback internship. I think they relied upon my feedback and everything, and they gave me a chance. There were 14 people who were shortlisted, and CAM never ever, since the moment we started with this campus recruitment process back in 2021, they have never ever conducted any group discussion. All they have done is taken personal interview, and since then I have never heard that CAM goes on asking questions which are very technical in nature. They would only ask something very very generic, which would just check on the part that do you pass the very in case if you have written a point that you have researched on, let's say section 138 of Negotiable Instruments Act, they might simply ask you a question on it and be done with it, because they just want to check that are you not faffing, because they can't go on verifying what kind of pre-work we have actually done through your certificates. So that would be it. And as I said, the CAM relies upon the people who they find friendly. So just put a smile, have a friendly, open conversation with them, tell them something more about you. And also, since the HRs will be present, don't be too relaxed or be very comfortable, since the questions are only being asked on your HR-centric questions. So don't be very relaxed. Be reserved, be polite, and put your points across in a certain way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we can take up our personal experiences from Trilegal.
Sure. Neeti, would you like to start?
Yeah. So, Trilegal, all three of us were shortlisted, so we can cover everything. And yeah, Trilegal is I think was the only firm that shortlisted lots of people. The others always had a 12 to 15 person limit. Trilegal had shortlisted, I think, 25 or 50 of us. Trilegal was also the only firm which had a GD round. Sam, AZB, CAM, none of them did. which is why it was slightly more intimidating, and also it was an easier like filtering mechanism for them. Trilegal does not have any questionnaire, so I think they only rely on your CV and what you write there. So of course that is important to keep in mind. Moving on to the JD. Sorry, Trilegal does have a pre-placement talk. Those talk to you about trilegal values, etc., etc., and that goes on for a good like hour and a half. So that is your time to also know quips about the interviewers and to like try and get to know as much about them as possible, because they're going to be the ones on the opposite side of the seat when they ask you the questions. So you're better off knowing as much as you possibly can, and also like being attentive to what they say in terms of like whatever they mention about trilegal. To again adding to what Haryashva mentioned, to ask them relevant questions, to ask them specific instances, anything specific about what they mentioned during the interview. Moving on to the GD process, we've had like very different experiences from year to year. I remember when we went into this process, we'd spoken to a bunch of seniors who already sat for the GD in the previous years, and we went in with the idea that the GD process is going to be fairly civilized. We were told that they'll give you a proposition, you get 5 minutes to prep, and then the room is open. So every person gets I think a couple of minutes to speak on their topic and to speak like to give their arguments, and then the room is open for like general discussions. But it's also very civilized. People are very like mannerful in the most. So at least for us, we were 25 of us, I think. So they split us into groups of 2, and even in that 12 to 13 group, they split you. They give you a proposition. 6 people argue for it. 6 people argue. 6 people. The remaining people argue against that topic. And here, I don't remember them mentioning that in the beginning. 10 minutes into the GD, they'll ask you to switch sides, which only means that you have to be prepared right from the beginning for all sides of the argument. In addition to that, I think we started off fairly cordial. Everyone was very respectful, very mannerful, very soft-spoken. 2 minutes in, the partners just told us we're not here for that. They asked us basically, the memo was, you have 15 minutes here, you have 10 minutes here. It is your job to stand out, and it is your job to prove yourself to us. They're not going to specifically look for anybody, which means your only criteria then was to make logical points, but also ensure that you're visible and you're audible in the room. Specifically from my experience, there were, I think, out of the entire 15-minute duration that the GD went on for, from what it appeared, they seemed attentive for even less than 5 minutes of the entire process. They'd be on their phones, they wouldn't pay attention, and that was very intimidating, like from the other side of the table, because everyone's trying to. It's a battleground. Everyone's talking over everyone. People are repeating points. You will say something, somebody else will repeat the same thing, but even louder. So there's a bunch of all of that back and forth happening, and in that moment, you're also trying to make sure you're audible. You're trying to make sure you're visible and you're noticed. So my only tip here is to, one, not faff. Do not go around talking about any rubbish that you can think of. You need to be heard and you need to be noticed. But the way that also happens has to be very like logical. That as vague as it might seem and as questionable as it might seem, they don't pay attention to what you're saying. They most certainly do, because that happened for me, and I think a bunch of others as well. Arguments that you place forward in your GD will be asked again. They will question you. They will try and rattle you during the interview about whatever you mentioned in the GD. So it's not like, chalo, that's 15 minutes and then you're good to go and you're done with shortlisted. It's not. Which only goes ahead and like helps me really highlight: do not talk crap, do not make illogical points, just to be heard. That being said, it is important to be heard, which goes that even if you have 2 logical points, make sure you're noticed with those 2 logical points, because if the GD process for this year is anything like ours, a lot of importance was placed on how noticeable you were and how audible you were in the room. But then again, that being said, as common as talking over other people, as common as really it was a fish market. It is also important to be respectful and to be sort of cordial throughout this entire process. Was my take on the GD. I think we can discuss our interview GD experience, our personal GD experience. Move ahead to the interview process. Haryashwan, Rashkeet, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's not much to add to the GD. It is basically whatever Neeti said. Similar experiences for all of us. They will try to intimidate you. As in, I remember, so Neeti, the cohort in which Neeti was, that was another room. And then Harish and I were in the same batch. And we were asked to go to another room. And when that room, just before we could start, they said, oh, the last batch was horrible. We're expecting better things from you. So they will pass off comments like that, even though they ended up selecting the same number of people from both the cohorts. I think so, yeah. So they will say things like that. So you really don't know what metric to judge on. And in terms of what I can advise you is how you do it is basically there's no short way that you can predict what the topic will be. So for us, the topic was, should China be the next superpower? That was the question for us. And obviously, 99% is that whatever matter that you are going to say, which is generic in nature, is going to be similar to everyone else. So you need to stand out. So here, what you can do, and this worked for me, is when I was preparing, there was a list of, all of us had brainstormed and we had seen a list of around 50, 60 topics that we wanted to study about, which were like in GK, for example, Article 370, for example. At that time, there was the Maharashtra issue, there was Manipur issue. Internationally, there was EVs, there were things like cryptocurrency. We had studied everything like that. So what I ensured, obviously, it does end up being a shouting match. And I know a lot of us are not very confrontational, especially me. I'm not a very loud person. I can't yell or I can't over someone. So it was very difficult for me to be seen for the first 5 minutes. If you're similar this way, then the only way you can stand out in a GD is through your content. And how do you, out of the bunch of the 60 topics that you have studied about, see even one single line of similarity which you can find in this. So for me, what had happened, because the question was, can China be the next superpower? I had studied about EVs, and I knew EVs. China is the first country when it comes to manufacturing EVs. They do that because they have what do you call? They have a huge control over the assembly line, and that's why manufacturing is something which they can only hold. So I think because EV is the future, that means China can also be the future. This kind of information came only to me because I had studied and I was able to connect. So see if you can find these linkages that you're doing and stick them. I'm sure it genuinely helps, and that's something they noticed. They brought it up in the interview. We'll speak about that later. But yeah, I guess that's all. Otherwise, in terms of GD prep, there's not much you can do. Haryash, if you have something to add.
Sure. Since the topic of GD is concerned, as Ardeep said, the way of the recruiters checking you, like they might ask you to go through multiple rounds, and that keeps changing. The precedents keep changing. So I'll go back 2 years ago. So for the first time that Trilegal took campus recruitment, that was a complete online process. At that point of time, they simply went ahead and they shortlisted good 20 people, and that was online interview. So Mindwell, there were these two partners. I'll name them. One is Ashwin Mishra and one is Gautam Singh. I think these two, I'm sure that these two were the ones who took interview in 2021, which was the online. And they absolutely grilled people. Like our batch of 2022 people came out of the Zoom room, and I was having a discussion with them where they said, "What are these guys doing? Like they are badgering us." Like for example, there was someone who was from who had done good moot court competition, and they said it to his face that we don't think so. You are good at mooting. It's just a fake mask that you have put on, and you have come up here. And I think that is the reason why you have lost. And it is all a tactic to rattle you up. So my point is that such things happen, and these two were the partners. And at that point, it was directly the personal interview. Whereas the cases for the batch of 23 during the 2022 interviews, there was GD round, but it was very small. Like it was not very detailed in the sense that he said that firstly you're given a topic, you're asked to speak for it, and then in the between they'll ask you to switch. Okay, that didn't happen for the batch of 2023, and consequently their personal interviews were very short, like 5 minutes. Whereas despite the good GD round, they still went ahead and grilled us for 25-30 minutes. These two partners, because for the batch of 23 there was the other two partners who were from GLC. So my point is the whole way of conducting interviews and GD round differs from partner to partner. So in case if these two people come, which is Ashwin Mishra and Gautam Singh, be ready that you are to be grilled, and just put a very strong face and go there with the whole mighty heart that you have to sit through it all. Now, as far as the GD is concerned, as Rajdeep said, I was in the second batch. So as soon as we invited us in, I think there were 14 people, so 7 ka group. And then they said that guys, we must point out that the earlier batch was too polite, and we want it to be spicy. All they were asking was to make it a fish market and be the best that you can, like put across your point in the way that you can. So all of these people who have like had experiences of GD, it is always very like you are given time to speak across a point, and then you are given some time to rebut. And even if you're not, people don't tend to speak over each other. But since partners bear out the flag that you're good to go with anything, we started to make points. And as sorry as I'm to say, there were few people who made good points but spoke very less. And then there were the ones who were simply stuck. They were not finding the right time to interject and make their mark. They were simply not considered. So my point is that if they have said, and as Niti said, that they will only pay good attention in the first 5 minutes, please be sure to make your mark there. And in case, as Radev also said, that there's no way of preparing completely when it comes to GD. For example, I also one point that since AZB didn't do this for our batch, I'll also go by the precedence for the other two batches which have gone before us. At that point, everyone was shortlisted, at least in the general corporate group, for the GD rounds. And AZP is very technical when it comes to that. So, for example, in the current context, if I may put it, you can expect questions on, for example, if you know that there's Public Examinations Act of 2024, which has recently passed in the light of NTA fiasco. So my point is they might ask questions on the topic that, how has the paper leaking history of India affected the overall generational people who have passed? This is just a makeup point that I'm making, but they are very tactful. They would go beyond the general corporate points. They might add up things like fungi tokens and NTF and things like that. So when it comes to crypto, which is like redundant these days, nobody's discussing it more, you can expect questions from them. In case if AZB decides GD round, please make sure you're very well prepared on the few topics. As Rajiv said, prepare a list of few things which have happened recently. It could be as simple as something that SEBI came up with, or it could be as simple as the very elections that happened this year. There was a change in number. So my point is you should have a broader idea about it. And my general suggestion would be, as I had never appeared for any GD round, I only did one thing. I expected someone to start. And as soon as I picked the flow where it is going, I built upon it. Even if I didn't know the very point of it, what I did was I picked from there and then I added my few bits. You should be knowing a few things, because if you are simply repeating, they won't appreciate it enough. And I would just like to differ from what Niti said. There was this one point where we were like discussing about China, but someone also brought in America. So, I just looked at the partners slightly and I saw what they are saying, and they had nothing to say about it. They were smiling about it. So my point is, even if you're fapping and if you're taking it in a bit of a different direction, that's okay. And I clearly mentioned when it came to the topic of China, someone mentioned about the sweatshops and how the white collar people, the blue collar people in there are overburdened and they have to go through some inhuman treatments. So that is all related to Foxconn company, which is of Taiwan. Okay, now it has nothing to do with mind well. But even if that point was put across as what atrocities does China commit, it was still passed on. Like partners didn't interject or say that okay, this person was not making a very right point. They were faffing enough. But my point is that anything like as simple as Belt Road Initiative or anything which was put across, if you're making some point and if you're making a mark in it, they were appreciative enough. And at times I had to since we were speaking over each other, you need to use your hand language to shut some people down. So in case if you're very soft spoken, you need to make your mark. Don't get agitated. Don't raise your voice in the sense where you're like fighting. it's like if you're lawyers and if you're into heated negotiation, know how lawyers work. Like you need to show your hand language and you need to be seated and put your points across. If anyone has suits, if anyone has seen suits, you would know how Louis Litton, how Inspector were. At times with the Badger. So, but there's a way of doing it. They don't stand up and harp upon it. So take all these nuances from it and then try to put it across there. And AZB, all the points which we said in terms of trilegal, they don't apply to AZB, mind well. They are exactly opposite. They would respect you for your courteousness. They will respect you for your friendly take that you allowed someone to speak over you and then you put your point across. As ideally as the GD should proceed, it be simply goes by the rule. As soon as you interject on if you are being too arrogant about some point, I think they would not appreciate it. So in case if they decide, this is my takeaway that please make sure that trilegal and AZB, these two are different in these states. And these two partners are notorious enough for giving topics such as these. Like I remember there was something similar. No, sorry, I'm confusing. For the batch of 23, there were some different topics. And what our seniors said is that you can simply search group discussion topics. And I think they too simply searched and gave any topic which came up on the site. So the first Google search that you'll do and any general topics that come up, they'll ask you simple questions from there. For example, there was this one. It was said that work from home versus work from office. It is as simple as that. And this was the number one point in the first side that came up. So this was the question which was asked in the GD round and they were asked to discuss upon it. Whereas these two partners were notorious enough to ask questions on the geopolitics. And that too is not very being heatedly discussed in India. So my point is just be wary of the fact that, anything can come up. Now we can dwell into the personal interview round. I think Nidhi, why do you go ahead?
Okay. I think we largely had similar experiences, I'd say, in terms of the interview that went ahead for trilegal. I'd say it wasn't technical. It was a bunch of banter. Okay, in the most convenient sense of the word. There was a lot of back and forth. Again, the same two partners, like what Haryashto mentioned, Ashwin Mishra and Gautam Singh had come, and they made sure they tackled you to some extent, which only means that any answer that you give, they will question you back on that. So even though they're not the most technical questions, there'll be, at least for me, speaking from my experience, I had, I think, a total of 3 technical questions, all based out of the CV only, nothing too complex or too difficult to answer, right? However, even in those questions, for every single answer I gave, they'd ask me a follow-up question and they'd ask me if there were any exceptions, if there were any instances where that would not apply. To everything they ask you, make sure you're very confident, because especially for this interview, they try and make you question every answer you give, which is where you have to know the difference between one, admitting where maybe there's a slight chance you've mistaken, and 2, in knowing where to stand your ground and showing that you're confident about your answer. And that will depend specifically from the partner that's asking you the question, to the sort of question that is to your body language even. A lot of it depends on your body language, I'd say, in these interviews, because they weren't exactly there to test how good our technical knowledge was, because I think that they'd already established in basis that they shortlisted. Similar to the CAM interview, I'd say they were inclined towards more non-technical questions, in the sense that they asked a lot of personal questions. For me, I think a very random question they'd asked is, if you're into running, who's the best runner right now? What Nike shoe would you recommend? Trends are going on, what the trends are, where you stay, where the name. I live in Vile Parle, so they asked me where the term Vile Parle. So there were a bunch of random questions like that thrown in the pool with a lot of technical questions also. Even there, like I already mentioned earlier, pay specific attention to the pre-placement talk. And if you can, I remember I asked a question I asked something not exactly technical, but just for right. There was a lot of back and forth. So I asked them questions that they'd already mentioned during the pre-placement talk also. So there was that. make sure you're respectful, even though they will, at least from our experience, they will like rattle you and they will try to question everything you say. Show that you're not entirely like a yes person. Don't blindly agree with everything they're saying, but also be very respectful. At the end of the day, they're the interviewers. Again, like I mentioned, they will go back to anything you brought up in your GD, which only means at this point here you really have to stand up, because maybe during the GD nobody else picked up on what bluff you were mentioning, but here they will bring that up again. And if it's noticeable, they will question you on that, and here you really have to be able to explain what you mentioned. So again, keep in mind that the GD round doesn't end just at the GD; it does go ahead and interview also. I think Haryash was already at this, but body mannerisms, the way you speak, the way you present yourself, all of that is extremely, extremely, extremely important from the interview perspective, because they've already seen you in the GD where you weren't necessarily being your most cordial self. This is where you have to be. You can't go ahead simply because they've already seen you really like talk it out in a fish market. You cannot continue that sort of mannerisms and those sort of like behaviors here to the interview also. You have to be extremely respectful. Again, I think similar to what I mentioned for the CAM interview, again, confidence is extremely, extremely, extremely crucial here. They will question you. You will have to stand your ground, and I think that's about it.
I think I largely agree with Nikisha, whatever she said. In terms of what to expect, this is what I want to expect. Mine was also very similar. To be honest, I really didn't expect Try would select me. I was also very flustered once I came back and I came out of the room. It was technically Rodi's interview, to be honest, because they do grill you a lot and they just want to see how long you can stand. And I'll just give you a few examples of questions which I was asked so that you know that this is what you're prepared for. So basically, you enter, and the partners are sitting in front of you, and the HR sits at the back. With constant eye contact between both of them. So that itself was a little uncomfortable for me because I couldn't see people in the room and what they were judging because they are also constantly judging. So I sat, and I wished them. And so in my CV, I mentioned that I also like to cook. So they said, "Hi, Mr. Mukherjee, you like cooking?" Yeah, I said yes. So then the partner said, "You must like cooking up facts. That's what you did in the GD." And obviously, I was taken aback because I had prepped for my GD well, and I was very sure about whatever I'd spoken. So they tried to grill me on why whatever I'd mentioned in my GD was wrong, but then I stuck to it. And then they asked me why I had taken GLC. Did I give CLAT? Which other national law university I'd gotten? And why did I choose over GLC? That I happened to mention that I had gotten MNLU and I got an MNLU and I didn't want to shift because I wanted to travel from home. And I chose this after discussing with a few people. They asked, how can you come to a fair discussion after discussing only with a few people? Is that your sense of judgment? Then why should we hire you? And I, on the other hand, got only one law-related question, and that too not from my CV. They asked me my favorite subject. I said contracts. They asked me, explain to me the concept of estoppel. And I got that wrong. In that moment, I'd studied about estoppel before, but I started explaining holding out to them. And they caught me on that. And I also stopped mid-sentence. And I said, sorry, I can't remember, but I'll give you an example. And then I started explaining holding out. They realized I was getting flustered. So they said, don't worry, your answer to this doesn't decide your fate for this interview. Then they moved on to what my favorite internship was. I thought this is an okay question to ask, but this also turned out to be a trick question where I said the name of I'd worked at. They were like, if you like that place so much, why don't you join them? They are our clients. I'll make you get an internship there. So you had to again come back and say, no, even though it's my favorite internship, I still want to work here. Then they asked me again, where do you stay? I stay in Navi Mumbai. They said, why do you like Navi Mumbai? Most of our partners don't like Navi Mumbai. And then they asked me, will you shift for this job? I was like, yeah, obviously, then commute will be easier. So this is where they remembered that I had agreed not to shift 5 years back. They're like, oh, that time you didn't want to shift. Why do you want to shift now? So basically, they stick onto your answers very strictly, and they want to see if you can, they'll try to move you from whatever principles you're adhering to. My last question, and this is where I was, this is the part where it gets most flustered, was where they asked me about who do I like more. They said there were two panelists. They were like, more between the both of us. And I said, sorry, I can't answer that question. And I was trying to be diplomatic. They were like, no, you've been diplomatic throughout the interview. You have to give us an answer. Imagine this is a deal. So then I said, then I also got a little confident. I said, okay, if you want me to answer, on what grounds do you want me to answer? They're like, oh, so now you're going to get over smart with us. Whatever grounds you choose. So then one of the partners had cracked a joke in the morning. And I said, because I was so stressed early in the morning, you cracked the joke. And that's why it helped to lighten my mood. That's why I think I like you more. So then the partner who I said I liked him, he said, oh, you think I crack jokes and I'm funny? Do you think I'm a joker? I'm not going to take your interview anymore. And the other said, what's the point of me taking the interview when you don't like me at all? And that's why my interview ended. So obviously I couldn't expect anything positive after this. But they just laughed and they said, oh, had a nice time talking to you, Rajdeep, you may leave. And that was the end of my interview. So it's very difficult to gauge anything. But yeah, that was my experience. Haryashri, you can tell yours.
That was fascinating to hear, Rajdeep. I thought they went some haywire over any other topic. I thought that was. I think I can agree with what you said. Okay, so a general point about personal interviews: that whenever you enter the room, although you are asked to enter, please be polite enough to ask them, "May I enter?" And then also stand near to the seat. Don't go on chair खींची or बैठ गए बिल्कुल. Just have the polite manner in which you ask them that, may I have a seat, please? They'll offer you what do you need, anything else. Yeah. And as I say, they started off with my name and everything. And then Mr. Ashwin Mishra pointed one out. He said that apart from your CV and everything, that's fine. I have one specific question. And he said that you, in your 12 marks, you have remarked that you have top scored in mathematics, which is 91 out of 100. What is something to be proud of this? I mean, do you think it is something which is unachievable? So I said, certainly not, sir, but I take great pride into the score that I've done, because it's a general trend that people tend to cheat in the 12 marks, which I have not done, and I was very honest in that. And I had solved at least two books of integration and differentiation, and that is simply my hard work, and I wanted to put it across. So I was like, acha, okay. But still, do you think it gives you the right? And I was like, yes, sir, I think it is something to be proud of, and hence I put it. So at that point, Mr. Gautam Singh, he asked me a question that, do you know what pi is? So I said, yeah, pi is an irrational number denoted by 22.7, which value is like, he stopped me like, he's like, no, that is not what I'm asking. Do you know what pi is? I was like, if I may able to answer, if you're referring to the mathematical equation, that's all that I know. I'm sorry, I would get back to you on that. And then they moved ahead, and you would not be able to see that I wear earrings. And he was sharp enough to catch that, and he said that, you wear these earrings. Do you think it's appreciated in a law firm where you have at least interned at 3? Do you think this is the dressing code? And do you think it is appreciated in the context of office? So these two, if I may use this word, I'm sorry, but these two were bullies. Okay, so they were trying to pin you down, and what they were essentially check is whether you are rattled, because usually in the case at times these law firms work under high pressure, and if you succumb to that, then the game is over. You would be put across as someone who is not readily suitable for this culture. So hence, this is, I think, what they are trying to do. And when they asked me this, I answered them back saying that being a proud Rajput, I take great pride in wearing this. So at that point, Ashwin Mishra interjected saying, so Gautam Singh right in here is also Rajput. And he does not seem to take pride in that. And do you think Rajputs are superior to the other caste? I said, certainly not, sir. It is just the pride that we have in our culture that we wear this. But they kept on harping as to why this, that. And at one point, I just gave away and said that, I think you're the first person who objected to it. I have worked at these places, and no one ever came to me and said that this is a point of hindrance. So they said that in case if we ask you to remove it, you. So I said, yes, I'm certainly not rigid about it. If you ask me why I keep wearing it, it is only for my motherly love that my mother gave it earlier in my days. And at that point, after I played my mother card, I think they simply let it go. And as similar to Radhi, they came up on flat and things like that. And after having a good set of questions where they sort of were checking my personality, I think they came up on technical part. I was asked, what is your favorite subject? So unlike the others, I chose to select company law, and I said, so they were surprised at it as to why this. So I said that I have enjoyed it. And then they asked me very basic questions related to it. It's like, what is share? Now, when you have prepared so much, you would not think that, okay, something such basic could come up. So at that point, I had to put my point across where I'm explaining shares to them. Because I go by the definition itself. So I put it, so they said, okay, then what is preferential shares? So I explained that what preferential shares is and how it works. So they were then digging further into it. At one point, I came to the height of it that, okay, this is how much I know. So Mr. Ashwin Mishra was pushing enough and said that that's okay, you're going on the right track, but you're missing out on one point of it. So I was like, okay, this is all that I know. And then they to let me go. And then they came up on things like my work experience. So they questioned that since you worked at all these three places, which is the place that you, and I had worked at Trilegal, and despite it, I chose AZB. So it's like, what? So I then had a very good reasoning, and then they said, okay, so you like to work in a team and that. So in hindsight, I've realized that there were a few times where I should have, like, these two are bullies, I should not have like retaliated enough and say that I'm not easily shaken. And as Rajdeep said, the setup was as such that the two partners were sitting right across me at the table, and there were two HR sitting at the back. I was using my chair to move around, and I was too relaxed. I came from this whole mood of GD round, and I simply went into it. So I think in hindsight, I realized that maybe easing too much up in the whole environment would also be not good. So you need to just hold your horses, and that is what I did different at camp. So just be mindful of that they are checking your constant body language and everything. And as well as one thing, I remember that the moment they were having this pre-placement, or after that, they remarked on one point, which I'll be covering later, where they suggested that all of these people were wearing black and white, and I was the only one who was wearing a nice three-piece gray suit. So they were appreciative of that, and they brought it in the interview itself. So when they were like discussing about it, they said that you have taken this, and since I was from Malegaon, I said, so they assume that it's a spinning mill office, so something like that. So they were like, have you taken it from Malegaon? Then I had to explain, no, nothing like that. And I went up, and I said things like, if you know Malegaon is infamous for bomb blast. So it's like, no, we know other things as well. Do you think it's infamous and you like downplay it? I was like, no, sir, I'm sorry about it, but it is mostly known by that, and hence I. And further, that whole discussion went there. Then they had eased up, and at the end, they came up to my hobbies and they said, "Oh, you like cooking? What do you cook?" So I was like, "Yeah, I mainly cook such and such things." And they said that, "Okay, what is the specific thing that you cook?" So I firstly started off with scrambled eggs, and where they said that, "Okay, scrambled eggs is something that anyone cooks, so nothing good about it." So at that point, I just said, "Hold on, sir, I'm coming more to that." And then I went further, and they were intrigued by it. And then they asked me that in case if you're hired in here, and in case the team decides that if we are throwing a party and if we ask you to cook, would you like that? I would relish that, because that is something that I enjoy in the first place. And at that happy note, it ended. And I thought that, okay, my interview went amazing because I was able to answer all that. And overall, I was not rattled up. But despite that, all these interviews and everything are very subjective. You might see what they would have observed. And so don't be hard upon yourself is what I'm suggesting. There could be instances where you think you have flown with flying, like you have done everything with flying colors, but that is certainly not the case. So just hold back, be cordial. There you need to put up a different face. You need to like be submissive to some of the arguments, because that shows that you're playing it correctly. Because back and forth, if we are using it, we are going back and forth on the same thing, then they say that this person is not agreeable enough to certain things as well. So don't be a yes man, but don't also be constantly saying no to them, because that is something that they would not appreciate. And largely this is the case. And also one very important thing, they observed that there was this gap between my 12th and law. So I had to, like, at that point confess that I had taken this gap, because if anyone of you knows, I had done 2 years of engineering and then I came in here. So despite the gap, and you might feel that this is sort of a weakness, I had to play it, sort of explain to them that it took me a while to come up with the hard decision of quitting engineering and go into the law. And then they were like, why it is like. And please also remember that at times this whole interview is supposed to be happening only in one language, which is English, but it is okay to use Hindi phrases and that, because that, as I said, that you also need to add a dramatic flair to it. You can't assume and say that, okay, these people, they don't know Hindi. They definitely do, because they have used the word. So don't simply play by the rules. Understand the environment and try to gel into it. That's the large advice that I have. Be that for any other interviews. Hi, Manoj, can you please mute yourself? Yeah. Okay, I think is there anything remaining related to Trilegal?
I don't think so. We can move to questions now.
Yeah.
So if anyone has any question, they can put it in the chat box. Either unmute themselves and speak.
And
Hi.
kindly let us post question for a specific person.
Hi, sorry. Hi, thank you for this session. It was really, really helpful. I had a question for all four of you actually. What is the difference between like a PPO interview and a normal campus placement interview?
Take this.
Yeah. 1 minute. Difference between
Sure.
campus interview and PPO interview, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Harish, will just check if the YouTube live works properly, in case there's some issue. So basically, fine. Now all of these people spoke a lot about GD interview, etc., etc. Fortunately, unfortunately, I didn't have to go through that. Mine was basically to give you a gist about how my experience went in short. Then I'll come and address your question. So I joined SAM in December 2022, 1st December 2022. I interned, I got my internship confirmed for 2 months, and thereafter I kept getting extensions basis my performance. So from December, Jan, I got extended till March, and then it got extended indefinitely. Till today, I do not have any confirmation about if I'm still interning at SAM, or I am interning, but I don't have any record of it because it just got extended indefinitely. Now, there are two situations. Either the team will require you to keep interning because they believe in you, and when you become an associate, you're like awesome, or they just want to train you for a while and give you a good break, you know. So there are two types. Don't hesitate working for too long because it's obviously going to work in your benefit. Today, when I am going to be inducted in mid July as an associate, I have a good amount of experience. I already know what matters I am working on. I will be working on how my teammates are, etc. So when I started interning in December, March, then April, then I went on a break for around a month and a half for my exam, and then when I came back and I got to know about this day zero thing that is happening, I went ahead and asked my partner politely, if are you looking to hire, like, do I have a chance of being hired? If not, then I do not want to miss out on a chance of sitting for day zero. This is where the conversation, also speaking to partners, is very important, and you need to keep in mind that you can't just walk in their cabin and demand to give you a job just because you've interned for a good amount of time. Absolutely not, because when you are interning, it's completely subject to your performance, and you can't just walk in and demand, because I have seen people do that and it doesn't work out, right? So you need to be very polite, and you need to put it very differently, like, would you offer me a position because I have my campus recruitment going on, and so and so. And thereafter, now I'll tell you how the process goes. Your campus recruitment process, you already know how it's going to be. But when it comes to your internal, uh, with respect to SAM, I'll tell you how it goes. First of all, you are asked to prepare a PPT. I'm telling you the usual process. I didn't do a PPT. I didn't do a technical interview also, for the fact that I had interned for for them to conduct all of these interviews. I thought that it's not required. But usually for other teams, I have seen competition law team, for capital markets team, I have spoken to other co-interns, and they have to prepare a PPT just like CAM and AZB have. Then they are made to sit with other partners, 2 3 partners. The other partners interview them. You have to ace that interview, and then you get qualified for another HR interview, and then your PPO is confirmed. this is the normal process. I also know one person got qualified after PPT round. He got qualified to the next round, and he did not get an offer. So it's not like all just because you have interned for too long, they'll just give you an offer. It's not like that, because I have seen varied scenarios wherein they have gotten a job and someone has not gotten a job despite interning for too long, because the upper management didn't approve or something like that. In my situation, I went to the HR. My partner approved my PPO, and then I had an interview with a neutral partner. Now the neutral partner, just when I entered in his cabin, he looked at my CV and he's like, "You have interned for almost a year. I have nothing to ask you," you know. And then I felt like interview can't be ending in less than 30 to 40 seconds. I have to speak and I have to try to make some conversation. So I went ahead and talked with him, and I about what are the different matters you work on. And then he felt like, okay, she doesn't want to stop talking, so he asked me one question ki, before you go, just tell me, like, why do you want to work in real estate? Estate seems to be a very niche area of practice. Now this same question can be asked for competition law also, for other few area of practices also, right? Some practices are very niche, and after that switching becomes not impossible but a little difficult. I told him that I have so and so experience and I have interned with the team for so long, and I resonate a lot with the team. It's also important to use words like resonate and not say that, oh, the team inspires me or motivates me. तो वो लोग क्या पूछेंगे पता है? क्यों तुम्हारे खुद के पास मोटिवेशन नहीं है कि तुम्हें दूसरों से लेनी पड़ रही है? So don't never say stuff where they can cross question you, because like Harishwan said, they have a habit of just like sort of purposely bullying or asking crisscross. So just say stuff like, I resonate with my mentors a lot. I've seen them work and I would want to do this. And this is what I've decided, for at least for now, that I want to, do this. So this interview, I think my interview, I reached my also something Harishwa will not tell you guys is to be punctual. For your interviews, you need to show up 15 minutes early. I showed up 10. My interview started way before time, and I was back on my floor for my internship before my interview was supposed to start. So my interview was scheduled for 11 o'clock, and my interview got done between 55 to 5:58, 10:55 to 10:58. So things like sometimes selection process varies firm to firm, team to team, even inside the team. Now you see, for Sam also, my process was completely different than a normal process, and Neeti's process was also completely different because it was a campus recruitment. Now to address your question, Anushka, assuming Anushka asked that question, so basically PPO, campus recruitment, is what, if you get selected through this placement committee's process, that will be called as campus recruitment. A PPO, technically this PPO terminology means that you have been with the company for some time, like an internship, and then basis your internship you get a pre-placement offer. And the pre-placement offer actually means, this placement word deals with the campus recruitment, the placement drive that happens, which is the terminology that is used. Pre-placement offer, that I got a PPO means I got pre-placement offer before even the placement started. That is the terminology. Although in GLC we use PPO as in getting placed well in advance, like getting placed in before graduation. This is the terminology we use, but this is the distinction, and the process also differs a lot. With respect to Haryash, what happened, I think, is his was like a mixture of PPO and a campus recruitment with CAM, if I'm not wrong. Like, he had an internship, then he had a callback, then they just thought that it would be convenient to induct him through the campus recruitment, and all of it. So it's completely upon the HR, completely upon the team, completely upon the firm. This is something that you should have clarity about, but this is also something you should not worry about, because your job is to perform not only well in your internships but in your interviews and in whatever you do. That is the difference. I hope your question is answered.
Yeah. I was wanting to ask about the difference in the process of the interview itself. And I think that was answered by you fairly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
After Anushka, I think we'll go with Shruti Srivastav because she had a question. She had questions in between. So Shruti, if you want to, and then Mannat, whoever's raising their hand.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for this session. And I have two questions. First on CV building. So in your CV, in the work experience column, we see only legal internships. In my first year, I also worked with NGOs. So is it advisable to mention NGO internships in my work experience?
I want to ask you one question. Was your whatever you worked with the NGO legal law related at all?
It wasn't law related. It was more like a charity kind of thing, or like maybe urging people to donate money or something. It wasn't law related as such.
Okay, so see, it's there is no hard and fast rule that your NGO internship should go below and not up. Like below means extracurriculars. Ideally, this would be treated as like a volunteering thing or like an NGO wherein you're doing social work. There's no problem if you mention it up. This is what I think. You should do is if you feel like right now your work experience or internship experience is not getting filled enough and you feel like I wish I had more internships to maybe fill in that gap, you can put it now. But as you go on securing better internships, I would suggest you take it down. Okay, this is what I did. I had two internships at the very start of my first and second year, and right now you will not see them in my CV because my CV has built up to such a great extent that keeping those two in that section is not relevant, or they are not contributing, they are not adding value in, you understand what I'm saying, they are not adding value as much compared to what value they were adding then. So for now, if you feel that your work experience is not already too heavy, you keep it for a while. But as soon as you start developing good internships and you feel that their value addition is, considerably low, you take it down.
Right. So maybe not in the work experience, but in co-curriculars, I can add that, right?
Yeah, but for now, if you want to add in your internship experience, you can do that. There is no hard and fast rule as to you can't. There's just criteria. Should have an internship certificate.
Right. And also, at one point of time in 2021, I guess, when everything was online, I was interning at two places concurrently. So, does that cause a problem if I add both of them? Because both of them were virtual. So, if I'm adding both of them, is the recruiter going to be a little bit, maybe he'll be questioning that why were you interning at two places at the same time or something?
Yes, there's a very high possibility that recruiter can ask you if he's giving that much attention to your CV and the detail links. And I've seen a lot of people do this. What I would say is if you really think that you were honestly not doing anything wrong, because there are two types of people who do this because it's a part-time and flexible job. They with working at two places. One people, the other set of people, they usually just try to secure too many internships at once and they want to put their hands everywhere. So if you have proper justifications as to why you took up two places, why you opt for working two places at once, then you need to have your justifications well written and well incorporated in your mind. You need to tell them that the only reason I opted was because both the organizations had informed me that it would be flexible, it would be virtual, and if you have like the consent from both of these organizations, you can also go ahead and say that the organizations were aware that I was working for two places at once due to the flexibility and virtual mode that they offered me. So you should have that justification. What, like I said, whatever you're adding in your CV, not only should you know what you're adding, you should also have proper justifications in case there's something inconsistent.
Right. And also, one more question about the CV. Can we be asked, I think it's an interview based question rather, can we be asked technical questions on our hobbies? So for instance, if I write that I have a hobby like I sing, so can they ask us technical questions about singing? Because I certainly do not. I sing as a hobby. Can they ask technical questions on hobbies or not?
So your question, first of all, you have framed it whether they can. Recruiters can do it. Will they is
Right.
the more appropriate question. Will they, again, we don't know whether they will or not. The answer, the one thing that you should be concerned about here is what you answer and what you answer, what you shouldn't. One is you're doing it for hobby, you just say that you do it for hobby. I don't know all the, like, if I'm singing classical music, I just like to sing it. I don't know the ragas and all of that. You can just be upfront about it, and accordingly even modify, like write it in your CV also, like this is and it's a hobby. I'll do what I want. I don't necessarily need to
Right.
ace it, right? You're stressing on this point, don't worry.
Okay.
Can
And one
I just
last.
add one point in here?
Sure. Yes, please.
I'll take a leaf out of an anecdote of a back 2022 candidate. I won't name the person, but she had written a hobby which includes doing Bharatnatyam. And I specifically remember the recruiter, who was also a lady sitting across the table. He asked that, okay, you do Bharatnatyam. I am also a very enthusiast in that. And if I'm not wrong, if it was Bharatnatyam, there are some stages in that. So she went on that. What stage have you cleared it? Okay. So as this is a golden thumb rule that, you know, whatever you write in your CV, you should be confident about it and you should play it to your advantage. Now it might seem okay that you say that, okay, I have only done this as a hobby. For example, CV is something which can be very coy about, like being normal, but something as Bharatnatyam, which is like very procedural and technical, it would not be appreciated when you say that, okay, I don't know the levels, because then it would come off to your face that you have lied about it, because there are certainly levels in that. So, and even when it comes to something like playing cricket, when I write, they might ask me a question related to the match of Afghanistan versus Australia, or Afghanistan versus Bangladesh, and there was something related specific to that, which is related to DR. So I would not get into the depth of it, but if anyone understands cricket, they would understand quickly as to how this question is heading. And if you simply write you like to watch playing, you like to watch cricket and play cricket, you would have to know this. So just my point that anything you write it to your advantage, otherwise you don't.
Yeah, the
Right.
simple rule is don't lie. If you have done Bharatnatyam and if you're written it in the hobby, then you should know it. That's the simple rule. Today I am writing कि I go to the gym and that person asks हाँ dumbbells उठाती है कि नहीं, तो मैं बोलूंगी कि dumbbells क्या होता है, then that's clearly that I'm lying. So just guys, don't lie.
You just need to know that they were students also at one point of time. They have inculcated hobbies, they have pursued it. So it would happen, and especially that they are from Chelsea, some things are going to intertwine. They would have done something similar what you are currently doing in your law college. So be wary of that and then simply write anything.
Right. Thank you. Okay. And one last question about CV. So once when I kind of built up my CV through the CV builder, there was this instance that just one line of my last line of my CV was coming on one page and the entire page was empty. So like, and also I cannot format it accordingly because the CV builder does the formatting.
That's an issue that should be redirected to the placement committee, I feel.
No, Nazir, I'm not talking about it as an issue. So if I have that issue, does it look bad if one page of my CV has only one line, and like how to deal with it?
I think it does. I think formatting should resolve this issue. It's like I said, if you are writing, okay, for instance, if my CV is one whole page, then the second whole page, and the just one last hobby ka mera ek last 2-3 words are coming on the last line, and then the entire page remains blank, I would obviously not want that. What I would do is मैं थोड़ा page layout थोड़ा बड़ा कर दूंगी या फिर margins कम कर दूंगी, and I try to maybe adjust it in the 2 pages itself. So do something like that, and take off the placement committee members, the senior coordinators, and I think it should be fine.
Right. Thank you. It was a very fruitful session for me. I just hope that the work culture at Trilegal is not the same as the interview environment at Trilegal.
Yeah.
Oh, please don't
It's
get
okay.
me wrong,
We
okay?
hope the same too. I think. Thank you.
Also, all the best for your upcoming job.
Thank you, Shruti.
Thank you, Smriti.
Thank you. We'll take question from Mannat first.
Hi, yeah. I had this question when Rajdeep was talking about it. So some of the questions that you asked the recruiter, like that engaged them.
Okay. So I have this top question. But again, I will not advise you to copy the same because I don't know they'll remember questions or if you copy, they'll see. So my usual question to them is that we know like law firms and the law industry in itself is a very fast-moving industry where people don't shy away from jumping ship. And obviously, because a lot of people shifting firms and shifting like after being a partner, they shift because obviously there's a huge amount of money involved. So my question was, being in such an industry, what makes you stick at your firm? So this question they really like to answer, and then they tell their story of how they joined this firm. So the dual purpose of this question is, one, I get to know their story, plus also I get to know a lot about the firm, like in terms of long term, what makes them stick and like what might just make me also stick. So both the times, I think even that trilegal, good 5-10 minutes just to answer this, and they were very happy to answer. So you can figure out questions like this when there's a slight bit of story behind that question and you give a bit of a context. So you could try it out.
So it's advisable that we ask them personal questions or related to the firm. Like it's up to the interviewer then at the end.
Personal questions definitely, because yeah, if you have researched upon the person, like if I know a partner has made a shift from a litigation to corporate, and that's something which you are also emulating, you can definitely ask them that I think I am at a crossroad where you were probably 10, 12 years back. I would want to know what went on in your mind, or what would you do differently right now.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Should I answer Ashray's question? Then you can take up Divya.
Ulrich can, if your name correctly.
Just a few questions. First, do y'all have statistics on how many people get placed, and if so, do y'all have statistics for 5 year and 3 year?
I think the placement committee.
You can go on and check the records of the past 3 campus placements on the placement committee's page on. It's a group on Facebook. You can go and search by keywords and you will find it. But by and large, if you are trying to establish a pattern out of it, I think it's unjustified because every time markets behave differently. Like I'll give you an example that during 2023, there was this whole sort of bull run where the recruiters were going haywire and they were hiring like left, right, and center. But the same did not apply for batch of 24. So my point is it varies. Okay.
And do y'all have any idea of what it would be like for this year?
Definitely not. I mean, you can't say, but from what I've heard and what I've discussed with few students, I think that they are going to go modest over it. I mean, you can establish more or less what happened last year or a slightly lesser.
If I can add something to this, Ulrich, the point is these are top tier firms. Okay, the amount of people who leave the firm every now and then every month is also a very good number. So it's not like they will not hire at all. They will definitely hire, and they will, since they have participated, they will mostly not participate just to hire 1 or 2 candidates. Okay, I'm not saying that they will hire. I'm saying that the reason they participate is so they can hire in relatively good amount. It is mostly seen that Sam does not hire a lot. Sam always sticks around 2 to 3. Last time also, I think 4 people were selected, including me. There were 5. 1 or 2 people had rejected. So totally only 3 people are now joining Sam. Okay. So Sam usually is the one who tends to hire very less. AZB dispute, so far we have seen only 1, at max 2 if they do. GenCop usually they go for a good number. Trilegal also goes for a very good number. CAM also goes for a very good number. Good number, I would just say, number is 4 to 6 people. Minimum maximum. Also, good thing about Trilegal and CAM, Sam, AZB also. I think SAM not so much, but all of these people do give a wait list also, because of the structure that we have created, wherein students' interests are secured more. That is, for example, Neeti got offered from Trilegal, SAM, and CAM. Now she can't choose all three, right? She will have to choose one, which means automatically two get rejected. So the placement company makes an effort to tell this whole process to the recruiters and make them understand that a candidate can only choose one, so automatically the two get rejected default. So what you can do is provide us with a wait list, and then if you're lucky enough to be a part of the wait list and not, unfortunately, if you don't make in the main list, and if you're in the wait list, then the number of their vacancy doesn't change, then the other person gets it. So I would also tell you all to be a little mindful about the fact that if you are ultimately, even though you know that if you're going to get selected, ultimately you will not be accepting any offers, you just try to think about it, try to introspect, because you will be most likely someone else's seat. So from that perspective, to conclude your question, I personally think if they are coming to hire, they will hire at least minimum 2 to 3 candidates, and they will not go completely without hiring anybody.
No, and two more questions actually. When will the placements be for the other firms? Like, I'm sure you'll have another placement week, right? For the other firms.
Yeah, I think placement committee at the end give them a detailed answer. But as of now, day 0 is scheduled. I think 19th August is the date that it's supposed to, the entire process is supposed to end. Right when the confirmations of day 0 go through the firms, the after that, day 02 process will either be have been started already, or it will more or less start immediately after the whole process of day 0 is concluded. For the reason, I think it's simple logic, right? Because if you also participate in day 2 and day 1 and day 0 are just going on simultaneously, it will create a lot of complications. So we will let day 0 end completely, and the placement committee is trying to come up with something like day 1 or day 2, wherein all these tier 2 firms, right, like DSK, Indus, Tanisha and Moryanshal can just interrupt me if I'm missing anything. These are the few firms which do not actually make it to tier 1 but are good enough. We will be the placement committee will be trying and getting them on board. So this will immediately happen in September, October, and if they do not agree for day 1, they will be inducted in October placement week, which is the usual second placement drive of.
I'm sorry to stop you for a second. I'm not familiar with this day 0 and day 1 concept. Could you maybe briefly explain that?
Yeah. So basically, day 0 is the campus recruitment we all have gathered here for, right? Campus recruitment, aka day 0. This day 0 concept is mostly prominent in NLUs. We have just modified the day 0 process so as to safeguard the students' interest and safeguard the recruiters' interest also. So we call it as campus recruitment, which is the first event of the academic year. Then, wherein 4 to 5 tier 1 law firms participate, CAM, SAM, AZB, Trilegal compulsorily participate. We would have 1 or 2 extra firms if they agree, but mostly we try to exclude firms who do not match the pay of tier 1s, that is CAM, SAM, AZB, because then obviously if one person gets shortlisted at, let's say, a firm paying lower than Trilegal or CAM, SAM, AZB, then they would obviously not everyone, but 99% people would go to tier 1. So it doesn't make sense to include other firms. And we have done this, we have come to all of this analyze and structuring after a lot of thought process, so you can trust the placement committee with all of it. Then they are planning to come up with a similar event where firms will be inducted, and we have two placement weeks. One is October, one is February placement week. So these are 3 to 4 major events wherein recruitment drives. Apart from this, regular notices are also posted on Facebook groups, which the links have been shared here. Ulkrit, if you have more specific questions about the placement committee and its functioning, then you contact either Tanisha or Moryansh, because then we are already short on time. That's why.
Sure. No, that was good. Thanks. One more thing is actually, what about the marks? Do they serve as a criteria for like obviously they do, but to what extent would recruiters look at your grades?
What? Harishwar, can you answer? I didn't understand the question.
Sure. So see, largely they are the first criteria, I would say. At times we have seen that there are people who have interned less, but they have scored more, so they have relied upon it. Since it is very specific to campus recruitment, where let's say a XYZ person would not have interned with that recruiter. So at that time, they look at the marks and then they take a safe bet on that person, saying that okay, these people have like scored consistently enough in their law school over 5 years or 4 years at that point of time. So they are sincere enough. This is the mindset behind it. So I think they go with that. So my personal suggestion is marks are really important to the extent that they get you a seat at the table. But in case after that you fumble and if you show the other side of you which they have not appreciated enough, all those marks would not matter. But with the marks, you ensure that you have a seat at the table of interview. And after that, if they were to like select out of 3 people that they have liked the most, if they want to go with only one, they will go score the most. This is the logic that they follow. Hence, you will see that most of the time the toppers are the usual ones who get selected.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I think we'll go with Shrishti Srivastava.
Hi. So my question is basically related to that. I've interned mostly in litigation and policy sector, but because the hiring doesn't really happen specifically for litigation except for AZFB is from what I've understood. So these firms will, I assume, ask questions in a general corporate law arena. So how do you recommend that I prepare for that? Except that I think it's been suggested by Neeti that we go ahead with contract law and company law. But considering that it will be very visible that I have done only litigation or policy internships, I think it could be a question that since you do not have experience in corporate sector, how would you handle that? I just ask as a like, what would you recommend how I handle that question? Yeah. And how do I prepare for a general corporate law interview? Because considering that I do not have experience, I don't know what the guidelines are or the general short form terms that people end up using around me. They aren't really familiar to me. So how do I tackle these things is I wanted to address.
Rajdeep, if you may please take up this question.
So thanks, Arya. So, hi, Srishti. I think I also went through a very similar process because I had also done a large number of litigation internships. And to be honest, till date, I've never worked a single day at a law firm doing general corporate work. So, yeah. For me, my reasons are also similar for shifting from litigation to Gen Corp because obviously, slightly because of the pay and also because employment opportunities. So, in that case, what I would suggest is there's nothing from Gen Corp that is specifically required from you. And secondly, when they are asking you to study, as long as you know whatever you've been taught, that's enough. And in terms of your experience in litigation, so they will ask you questions from litigation itself. You do not need to go beyond that in terms of specific Gen Corp knowledge. But to satisfy yourself, like be better prepared, what I can suggest, you can do a short bit of reading of going 2 steps ahead from whatever your Jhabwala, company law Jhabwala tells you. So, for example, you can read up slightly on happening in corporate. Your first challenge is obviously going to be to justify to them why are you making the shift. So, get that answer concretized because 99% are going to be asked that question. And then you talk about what excites you in corporate. For that, you'll have to read a little about corporate, what functioning looks like, just so that you're on the same page. You're not going to be asked really super transaction related questions or short forms. Don't worry about that. As long as your knowledge base about litigation is solid or your policy experience is solid, and plus whatever you've done in company law is solid, I think you're good to go.
All right. And the second question was actually specifically related to the AZB litigation. considering that we don't study subjects like arbitration or CPC itself would not have been taught till the time we sit for the interview by the time. So how much is that? I mean, obviously it's relevant, but how do I tackle that? Because obviously we can self-study, but my question is, would the litigation interviews then still the interviews would expect us to know in-depth detail of arbitration or CPC or IPC, etc.?
Yeah, that's a slightly additional challenge with AZB litigation interview. You're required to know slight bit more than what you've been taught yet. So yeah, CPC is required. And I think someone else also asked a question about AZB. Something about the assessment interview. So yeah, to answer your question first, yes, you will need a slight bit of more added information, but that doesn't mean you and like from those acts, that's not necessary. As long as it's similar to your work, you can tell them, listen, this is how much I've been taught. And they know very well that you're taught CPC, CRPC in the final year. That's something which is not done. But any added knowledge is always appreciated. I think someone had asked a similar question. I'll answer that now only, about if you've been rejected. So yeah, so I had done disputes and I had given a PPU interview for AZB disputes, which I couldn't qualify, but I got an offer from AZB corporate. So there is no rule as such that if you've given a callback internship and you don't get in, you can't apply to day zero. If they have liked your work and if they think they want to give you a second chance, they will definitely give it to you.
I would just like to answer in here. I think Divya's question, if I'm not wrong. So see, like there was this one exception related to Rajdeep, but I observed that there were other 3 people as well, which included me, and we 3, without naming the other 2, there was this one who was in litigation, and the other 2, I and the other person, we were in corporate. So we callback internships, and at the end of it, as callback internships are supposed to go, at the end of it, you are supposed to give a presentation, and if in case required, a partner interview would happen, and subsequently qualify. So all of us 4 were not offered for XYZ reasons, and the other 3, which included me, were not shortlisted for the interview process at AZB. So it is largely considered that, in case if you have already been reviewed, okay, you would not be asked to sit in the campus placement. And something similar was also told to me at CAM, because I was interning there in the month of July, and the campus recruitment interviews were placed in August. So my team has said that in case if we say yes to you, you are done, and in case if we say no to you, you are also done, because you are already rejected, sort of. So usually it happens that if you have already been reviewed through the process of days, and if you have specifically heard no from them, consider that there's very less chance of you getting shortlisted. I think Rajdeep had interned at litigation, and then he subsequently applied for the general corporate rounds. They might have given him a good chance, because nonetheless the feedback would have been good, is what my understanding is.
If that's okay, she's done. In case there are any other, Shruti, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, one last. Okay, she's asking a question.
So I just question. Mansi spoke about adding value to the CV. Now everyone in the second or third year, or when during the COVID phase, has interned somewhere, maybe at a random place, even if it was pertaining to legal work, we might have not received that much work, or it is not adding that much value to our CVs. So I just wanted to ask that as of now, I have written everything, but is it advisable to remove it, or is it okay even if we haven't contributed that much to that particular place?
I think my opinion here is that anything that you put on your CV has to be something that adds value. I think Mansi's already covered this before, but if there is no substantial value addition basis anything you've added in your CV, it is okay to remove it. It's okay to remove an entire internship even if you think you haven't, if you don't think you have enough material to show that this and this is what you worked during that internship period. If that.
Okay, and does the quantum of work matter? Like, necessary to have your every experience needs to have a certain number of pointers. of the amount of work? Does it matter, or is it okay even if you have done like a little? It speaks volumes. So that's
Right. So it also depends on how long your internship is, right? If it's a longer 6 month even internship, then you need to show what you worked on, because you cannot simply just go ahead and write 2 points and this is all I worked on for those 3 months. Then again, only add things that add value. So if there's some random like proofreading work that you've done, don't add it. Even though it probably took you all day, it's okay to skip that if it does not add value, because that's basic. So specific propositions that you researched on, anything that you helped with drafting, all of that can go. But to be specific, there's no set number of pointers that you have to keep in mind for every work experience brief.
Can I just add one thing? I would like to club these 2 questions. Shruti had asked that whether 2 internship experience where the duration has coincided. I would suggest strongly that don't do that. Pick anyone, because moonlighting is not appreciated. Because Mansi said that in case the recruiter is generous enough and they go ahead and ask you that, okay, I can see that you have entered simultaneously at 2 places. How did you do that? And then you can justify saying that, okay, they had allowed in the first place. But what if they don't ask you and they generally make assumption that this person was moonlighting since it was online? And since it's frowned upon, I would suggest very strongly to not write it. And in case if you still want to put it slightly where duration is not to be mentioned, again, this is something out of the, but I would say you can add it in extracurricular. So similar to what Umayani asked related to if there's anything which is not very value adding, but still want to write something such as NGO. Someone also said that we can write in co-curricular. Please be mindful that co-curriculars are only supposed to be for the competitions and other things that you have undertaken during your law school. Any such experience that you want to add, which was of part-time nature or anything, you can add it into extracurricular. Best to make your CV concise, you can remove it if it is not value adding, but if you still want to do, you can add it in extracurricular. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
1 minute. Just Ashray, that's what I also covered. I think that if you think it was flexible and virtual, and if you can give a fair justification, you can take that risk. But if you don't want to take that risk, then like Haryashva suggested, just put one in the main part and another somewhere in the co-curriculars or somewhere. It's completely up to you. But it also goes a bit against the work ethic that don't take up 2 things at once. Okay, so 1 point. And Umehani, I think quality over quantity here. Sometimes what happens is it's a 2-week internship or a 4-week internship. You are made to work on one matter only. For the 2 weeks, you are only working on one matter. So अगर हमें बॉइल डाउन करके मुझे ये बोलना है कि मैंने 2 वीक में क्या काम किया, I will say I only worked on title due diligence. That is to 3 words. Oh my God, she only did title due diligence for 2 weeks. Obviously not. When the person who is interviewing you would understand the meaning of what title due diligence is, they would know what all work goes in that. Also, to say that in your initial internships, तुम ज़्यादा काम नहीं करते हो, but there are a lot of things you learn out of it. The basic things like how to use format painter in Word document, how to justify your Word documents, like the very things that is a must know in your field, right? That is how you learn. So completely omitting internships which have actually built you would also sort of not be fair, right? Because you would want to फिर तुमने सीखा कब फिर ऐसे हो जाता है. So you need to let your CV also show parts wherein you didn't do much but you did enough for you to be able to secure that other internship you have written just above it. Okay, so that is my take on that.
This helps a lot. Oh, thank you so much.
No worries.
I would like to take a question on Shaili Srivastava. She had asked if you are caught up in murky waters related to a topic, how can you redirect the discussion? I think in your honesty lies your answer. If I were to put it as an escape, I think in your honesty would lie your escape. I was asked this question that, okay, after 12 you have done engineering and then you subsequently shifted to law. So at that point, I had to justify that, I was in Pune, I was doing engineering, and then I was not liking the college. And to my calling, my natural traits I always had an inclination back of the mind, but I was never ready to answer it to myself. That I want to pursue law. It's only later at the stage when I had the maturity to understand it completely, and that this is not my cup of tea. I took the leap of faith and then I shifted to law, and it has turned out well. So I have no regrets. When I say this in my honesty, would like a very, very good reasoning as to why I did that, and I think they would be appreciative of that. I'll also give you an example. Like John F. Kennedy during the 1955 asked this question as, since Kennedys were very rich families, so they were asked that the Great Depression had marked all Americans inwardly. How do you plan to address it? So he said that, I come from a very wealthy family. I had no pains whatsoever. I'm not sad. So I might not be the right person to answer it, but I have seen that my dad at that point of time hired extra gardeners so that they can have meal of 2 times. So in that very thing that they did while being rich and not like trying to dodge it, he gave an understanding that he understands what it is to be poor while being wealthy. So my point is that I've always seen that any person who has given a very good answer to us all such tricky question, I've always chosen the right to बस बातें बना रहे हो. I think Shruti has raised her hand. But before that, Shruti, just a second. If there's any question in the chat box.
Anyone else, if you have missed anything in the chat box, you can just unmute and ask us the
There's
question.
a question Mridula has asked. Were you asked on why the switch to GenCorp? Have you answered this?
Yes, I was asked this both at Trilegal and ASMB. Are you asking anything specific in terms of this, Mridula?
Yeah, because personally, I also did quite a few litigation internships, and
Yeah.
currently I am doing a bit of GenCorp. So
Okay.
you suggested pay and pay factor and all of those things, but what was exactly that you said, like a reasonable thing?
Yeah, so pay is something which you can't answer. So what my answer was, I think 3 components. I'd say one is that I had done a bit of in-house work before, so I understood that I liked applying my analytical skills a little more than my research-based skills. I know there is enough research in corporate also, but there's a fair share of analytical work there. So I like that. That was number one. Number two, I really liked in corporate that you can be a part of a matter that is from drafting of an agreement, whereas litigation, it comes to you only when a dispute arises. So you are working with a narrower or a stricter sense of facts which are given to you. You can't go beyond that, because probably if you've agreed to something in a contract, there's not much you can do beyond that. Your loopholes are not that many. So I like that. And second, I also spoke about how India right now is at a cusp of a revolution in terms of the global corporate market, in terms of how multiple markets are actually opening up in India, where I do see a lot of global transactions, cross-border transactions happening, and I would want to be a part of that movement. So that, and other than that, not litigation or anything, I said a lot of times I've seen the work that I've done at at a litigation internship is very specific, like extremely specific. For me to pick up that skill from there, other than my procedural skills that I've obtained, there's not much similarity I can find in another litigation, because if I've done family law internship versus some other litigation internship, I can't find similarities between them. That was one of the reasons. And I think my last reason was, yes, I feel there are a lot of other components which are not in our hands, which does affect the efficacy of your work. This looks like court dates, this looks like who the judge is, things like a lot of other things which probably affect your work. So I would want to have a less number of arbitrary factors that are affecting the success of my work. That's why I'm shifting to corporate.
Thank you so much.
Largely.
There is this question by Sanskruti Hebakar that what are the criteria for shortlisting students for the further process, and is having interned at tier 1 firms considered as a prerequisite for selection? Largely, if I can answer very quickly, criteria for shortlisting students is largely based on the academic marks. So the placement committee in here sends an Excel sheet along with your CV, which is arranged from the factor of cumulative percentage that you have scored over years. Let's say if you are sending in your marks for till 7th semester, since your 8th semester result would not have come, your cumulative would considered for that, and accordingly your names would have been arranged. So then thereafter they simply say that in case if there's any person who has not interned too much and lacks the practical aspect of working, then they might skip that person. Otherwise, they will usually go with the top ones. And then there comes this one point that they ask that have you previously interned? Like for trilegal, you would be filling in one Google form, this another for CAM. They have the set of questions where you might tick yes, and then you say the team that you have interned. So they could be gracious enough, and which they usually are, that in case if this person has previously worked with us, they would want to bet on that person, and hence they shortlist. If you ask me, is it a definitely not, but if it is there, it would help you. So this is the larger criteria. And then after marks, it is solely not the case that, okay, in case you have scored enough, you would definitely clear the interview. Thereafter, you need to show up your personality as well as the other things that you have done. So at times I've seen that, like for me, I have not been the most consistently scoring well. I have not been the topper. So then at that point, I have my strengths with the kind of work and the brief work profile that I've written. I think that played to my. I mean, you never know what they can see. So just put your best foot forward and rest leave it to them.
One more point, this column now which is being asked whether you have interned in the past, this can work in your favor or it can't, or it won't, right? Because so basically if you have interned in the at previously trilegal, they will first ask you which area, which team and which partner. I said they'll ask you details. Then what they do is they go and check the feedback. Feedback is positive, then they'll shortlist you. If your feedback is not positive, they will definitely most likely not shortlist you. So this can work two ways. You don't have any option, you will have to write it down. But yeah, we
Also, very quickly about location, all these firms who come in here recruiting at GLC,
Aisha,
they assume that you are applying.
replied. Sorry, but we have replied if you check.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I think AZB and CAM was not answered maybe. So hence I say that all of these assume that you are from Mumbai. But in case if they ask for other location, but it would be mainly for Mumbai.
Okay, just to like conclude this session now, because it's been too long. We are hungry. I think what we will suggest you all to do is, I have just two things to say and then I'm out. So we four of us, if you all need any help or if you have any questions or guidance, at least speaking about myself, I would be available. If you all have my number, great. If you all don't, you all can reach out to the committee and take it. So we four are more than happy and willing to guide you step, because we don't want you to. We are your mentors. We are your seniors. Take advantage of us. Exploit us if whenever needed. Please be also courteous about our time, because we are also working. But whenever we get time, we'll also be mindful that this is something that you need help with, and we will answer you whenever we get time. That is first point from my end. The second point that I wanted to make, actually, I think we should have made it earlier because now half of the people have left. But for all those who are here, if you not crack through campus recruitment, if you all do not make, if you all don't get shortlisted, if you all don't pass the interview or and eventually do not get it, please do not beat yourselves up. Do not get demotivated, because this is just the beginning, right? You will have the entire rest of the year to secure a job. And the point of everyone saying कि हाँ campus recruitment हो गया उसके बाद तो कोई chance ही नहीं है, all of this to an extent is true, because tier ones lose interest after day zero, but you can still try to secure internship. You can still, by your performance, try to secure an internship. You can still you can try to secure an internship, and then through your performance try to get a job, like I did. Like I got purely based on my performance and how I worked, right? I did not even get interviewed for an internship. Later on also I didn't get interviewed. It was purely about how I was with my team, with my partner, how I worked under all of them, etc. So believe in own strengths, that you can perform well, you can work well, you can gel well with the team, and all of these things that matter the most. Get demotivated, you have the rest of the year elsewhere. You can apply to tier 2, tier 1. If you feel like tier 1 may be chance in EM, apply to the other firms. In less than 2-3 years you can try and make a shift if tier 1 is all that you want. All of these things are possible, but being demotivated and giving up would be the worst thing one can do. So do not do that, and all the best.
Just one thing. I'm really sorry. I know we need to conclude, but I missed out on this. We had also put up this point of addressing you on making your LinkedIn. I would not be harping on the details of the students of Batch of 25. I think it's still not late. You can make your LinkedIn profile. Just for the sake, if someone goes on searching you, you should be there. And the ones who are present from the other batches, start now. Make your LinkedIn, add all your details which can be easily referred compared to your CV. All those things which are mentioned in your CV should be present on your LinkedIn, and it would just help you connecting further. And regarding the decorum and everything, I don't need to address much more on that. I have any other color code of formals. Okay, so just choose any decent one and just try to make your mark is all I would say. Very good. Thanks.
Everyone is here. But if you're actually, okay, fine, continue. Is it okay if we four take a leave?
Yeah.
Do you all have any concluding words? Please.
No, honestly,
Thank you so much for your yeah. Thank you for listening to us so patiently, and all the best. And if you all need anything, we're here. So please reach out to you as much as you can.
Yeah, I think same. Good luck to everyone. It's going to be a relatively more stressful month, but it's of the world, and it.
Don't attach yourself to the results. It's a very subjective thing. Some might value you for something, others value you for something else. And I think at the end of the whole process, and after you've crossed your the law school, I think you end up at the and one should be complacent, because otherwise you can constantly keep on harping on things have not secured that. Luck plays a very large role. Okay, and hence I always say to people that make the best for yourself, but don't attach yourself too much with the results. It's too much of a competition, and it's okay to be where you are. Thanks.
Before you guys leave, we would like to thank you all on the behalf of Placement. Thank you so much for removing such an important time of the day and helping out all the students as much as you can. We really thank you, and all the best for you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
For everyone here, they are just going to brief you all on the process. So just listen, so that it'll be easier for you all. I'll be here.
So the registration process is going to happen on 6th and 7th July 2024. We will be having mostly our registrations on those days. There will be 4 desks in the specific order: student registration desk, CV desk, CV verification desk, fee desk, and soft copy desk. You have to make sure that you register at the registration desk. There will be specific QRs for both the batches. Make sure you upload your photographs in a formal attire with white background behind. Moving on to the soft copied CV verification desk, you have to show all your certificates for the internships and other co-curriculars that you've done in your college timing. All these will be verified, and if any problems arise, you have to show us the certificate and so on. Moving on to the fee desk, you have to pay us fee, that is the 450 amount for the continuation of the process that we're doing. And coming to the soft copy desk, the rectified CV, but the last final copy of the CV that has been verified by the placement committee, copy of the same has to be uploaded, which we will be further sending to the recruiters. Any questions ahead of this? Please let us know. Yes, Harshit.
Hey, hi. So I'm Harshit, and I have this question. Actually, not the question, but it's my request that by any chance, can any virtual mode of uploading the documents or any virtual mode of submitting the documents for the day zero works for you guys? Because many of us and many of my friends are.
We understand, but like this was always like we had announced the dates of the registration in advance, and you have to be physically present for the registrations on 6th and 7th. If that not, you can send us a mail with the proper reason, and we may we'll let you know about the consultation over the call.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, I had a question not related specifically to day one, but Mansi just mentioned about how, I'm sorry, day zero. There's another placement drive also for tier two law firms, so it follows the same process as this one, right?
Yes, all the 3 placement events that we conduct, all of the 3 events have the same procedure.
So in day one placements, tier two law firms.
Right.
And then there's the October placement.
No, the tier 2.
Sorry. No, you.
No,
No,
Mansi,
I'm just
continue.
they are planning to. If it goes well, and if most of the recruiters show enthusiasm, then only it makes sense to conduct a separate event. If relatively many recruiters don't show up, then I don't think it makes sense to dedicate her whole. Yes, this is for year students only. It doesn't make sense to dedicate a whole event just for 2 or 3 recruiters. Then we might as well just club them with the October placement week, right? I mean, that would be the better option to go with, but after all, it's the current members' call. Sorry.
Just to add on, so basically, events that we have right now: campus recruitment, Doctor Placement Week, and the February Placement Week. About the day one, we'll be updating you all accordingly.
Right.
Yeah. So we thank you, the audience, also for coming and taking out the time. And if you have any doubts, you can always reach out to me and Moranj, and we will clear the doubts as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
This Chris had a question. This is only for final year students. Just clarify it with him later that February is not only for final; it's for everyone else also. वो बस एक उसको clarify कर दो.
Yes, Mansi.
ठीक है. Cool. Students, bye.
Bye.